started with the revolution. And America, we started with the Constitution. Or did it all go wrong? I can't
This is going to be our last meeting of the year. Can you hear me okay out there? Okay. It's the last meeting of our year. We're very excited to have a very good guest speaker who I'll introduce shortly. This will be my last meeting as president of this organization. Last time I will... Somebody cheered that? Who cheered that?
Roll them out.
I'll leave them in here. They know. It's the last time I get to stand up here and look out at all my friends and say all the things that bring tears to my eyes, and I'm not going to do that. But I appreciate everybody of what you've done over the last, well, it's almost 3 years. That Elaine, would you come out here? I know you all know her, but I want you to appreciate her as much as I do and give her a nice round of applause. This is the only place where I can tell her what to do. So Nancy's going to come up in a moment and explain some of the...
Patriots, it's good to see you all here tonight. First thing, Stan mentioned, this is our last meeting. We're going like Las Vegas, dark in December. But at any rate, as Stan mentioned, this is our last meeting of the year. And what we would like, we have a favor to ask of you as a result. You'll notice when you came in, there were pink cards. I see a stack of them here. Everyone should have a pink card. And if you would think, while we're talking tonight, about what you feel would be the two most important objectives for our group as the Tea Party for next year. As you know, it's a critical, beyond critical year for what's going to happen in this country. So we're asking for any of your ideas or suggestions. So we want to be sure that we're all marching together to hopefully achieve a new administration next year and some changes. Also, if you happen to know, anyone who's a really good speaker that you think would be great for the Tea Party, give us the name and put your name on the card, okay? When we're through, if you drop them in the white box on the table that's marked registration, and we'll collect them at the end of the meeting. Thank you.
Gracious Heavenly Father, we come to you this evening with bowed heads and hearts, acknowledging this great country that you gave us so many years ago. Lord, you blessed every one of those men who prayed diligently over every aspect of that Constitution, and now it's been disintegrated. And so, Lord, we are asking you tonight to guide each and every one of us in this room in all areas of knowledge and wisdom when it comes to the awesome job of restoring this country to what it was. Thank you, Lord, for being with us this evening. I ask blessings on our military men all around the world who serve so valiantly and are so unappreciated by our current government. Lord, now I just ask blessings on this evening, that everyone will be attentive to what Dr. Patrick has to say, and that they then can indeed go out, not just to their friends and neighbors and share what they've learned tonight, but that they will have the courage to speak to their own doctor about the situation that's going on. Thank you, Lord, for hearing our prayer. Thank you for your presence here tonight. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And now, Stan, if you would introduce our guests, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you. Critical year for all of us coming up. And I had a lot of long conversations with our son, Mark, about it. He's concerned as much as anybody, and he's around the country. In fact, as we speak right now, he's in Grand Rapids recording his book that is coming out on the, I think it's the 12th, I'm not sure.
It's changed to February.
It's changed to February, so I don't even know. But he's doing the actual recording so that when you buy the DVD, which I hope you will, you'll actually hear him doing it. It's not, it's unusual for the author themselves to do the recording, but they did a trial with him and he was so good at it that they wanted him to actually do the recording, which is really great. And he'll be home tomorrow. He'll finish the book tomorrow. He's got about 20 pages left. He sits in a little glass booth with a director and a sound engineer, and they say, no, you pronounced the T wrong. Pronounce that over again, you know, that kind of stuff. But he says it's a lot of fun. That's just the start of our battle. This is a battle. This is the big battle that we, our generation, is going to fight, is in 2012. And we all have to be ready for that. We all have to give whatever we can give. And if that's just an hour now and then, that's fine. Because our country's at stake right now. We all know this. We all know people. We hear it every day of friends and relatives that are troubled financially because of what's going on. Business is lost. And we have to contribute to fight and take back our country. So that's up to you. And now I have a gentleman I'm going to introduce. Let's see, Dr. something or other, Pat Wagner, right? Dr. Wagner is a retired surgeon on volunteer status. I've spent many hours talking with him. You will find him fascinating. I'm not going to give you his bio. It's much too long. And I think he'll be able to do that during his presentation to you. So please give a warm welcome to my friend, Dr.
It's going to be about bringing back private practice. Now, people might say, what does that mean? Because we already have private practice, but this is what the topic is about. Now, I've got 4 objectives in this discussion. The first one is to define my preparation in becoming a physician surgeon. The second one is to define private practice based on my experiences, and you might be able to relate to that. The third objective is to define managed care, again, based on my experiences. And number 4, let's get the conversation going. All right. To begin with, to define my preparation briefly, I started to prepare to become a doctor and a surgeon when I was a kid. I had a dream, a desire. I believe it was a God-given desire. And I fast forward to high school where I played football. One other point. Nobody in my family had ever been a doctor, and nobody really had gone to higher education. However, we had successful people in my family. Got into high school, played football, liked the discipline, liked the teamwork, liked the winning, liked the whole thing, and I liked school about as much as to keep eligible to play football. So I had about a 2.0 GPA. Now, that continued on into college. And the first couple of years, I was fortunate to play junior college football, same scenario. I got an injury the second year of college, and interestingly, the team surgeon let me watch part of my operation. They numbed me from the spinal anesthetic, so I got to look down. He says, I'm interested in medicine, so he let me watch a little bit. All of a sudden, with an injury and no more football, the lights went on. It's time to become a doctor with a 2.0 GPA. Well, the next 3 years, and this is serious, the next 3 years was the energy and everything went into becoming a doc, and it was just infectious, you know. So by the time I ended up with my undergraduate degree, which was 5 years, and I got a degree in chemistry, I basically had a non-negotiable. I couldn't get into medical school. It was way out of the question. My professors saw the interest I had, and I was very competitive by that time and getting good grades. And so they said, get a master's degree. So I moved on to University of Nevada, and I got a master's degree in biochemistry. That took 2 years. So now, the investment, 7 years, post-high school, and I got into medical school. Well, 4 years later, I'm a medical doctor. At that point, the dream was to become a surgeon, and that meant an internship and residency, and that meant to get into a residency program, which I handily did at that point. and it was at University of California, Davis in Sacramento, and that was a 5-year adventure. So the entire time from after high school to being a board-certified general surgeon, I'll explain that briefly here, was 16 years of education. Wow. That's typical, ladies and gentlemen, for surgeons. Anyway, and board certification means that there is a certifying and qualifying organization or board that specifies that you are qualified to practice surgery in the United States. And so, and general surgery is surgery that's done in the chest, abdomen, neck, everywhere. It's good surgery. It's serious surgery. It's life-threatening a lot of the time. When you have a disease, it's life-threatening. And it's so gratifying to be able to operate on people and help them get better. So, the definition of my preparation. Now, the definition of private practice based on my experiences. My first step after being a surgeon was my wife and I said, where are we going to practice? And we said Sacramento. So I said, okay. I went down to the downtown, midtown area of Sacramento, and I went to the local hospitals there. It's a geographic situation is the way it was. And it turns out there's 3 hospitals, Sutter Memorial, Sutter General, and Mercy General Hospital. I went to those hospitals, and I got I went for staff privileges in, and I handily got the thumbs up for becoming a surgeon. I mean, get staff privileges to the hospitals, no problem. The next thing I did in private practice, and that's what everybody, would you hold that for me? There you go. Was to get, to hang a shingle. And what I did, there's been a couple of rotations I've done as a resident, which were where I worked with a private practice surgeon and scrubbed in with them on some cases. And I made a point to stop by his office and said, what does a guy do to get into practice in this town? He said, I tell you what, young man, take over my practice. I'm leaving you come. I said, wow. I said, what can I do to pay you back for that? He says, do the same for a young surgeon coming up down the road somewhere. I said, great. So, and what this included was an office with 2 exam rooms, a waiting room, private office, all fully furnished. I had a neat little secretary that knew how to bill for doctors and so forth. And sure enough, the whole thing was great. I mean, what did you ask for? Not only that, he introduced me to about 4 of his colleagues, general practitioners they called them in the days. And these physicians were, he introduced them to me and said, I've got a guy that I'm going to think is going to be a good guy. Give him a shot with your patients. And they said, okay. So I started right there, and it was just fantastic to have, I hung my shingle literally. The next thing I did was I needed to really get going in town. So I went to those 3 hospitals that I had privileges in, and I went into the emergency rooms, and I said, here's my card. Patrick Wagner, MD, general surgeon. It had my phone number and my office number on it. It said, I'm around, I'm available. Let's get at you. I'm happy to come down here and look at patients. I rapidly found, with all 3 of the emergency rooms, that business just came my way. I mean, they were just happy to send me patients, and it was kind of a situation where you're available, and they've got patients that are very sick down in the ER. They're happy to have somebody to come and take a look at them. And so I became very busy with all of that, and I established my practice. In the definition of private practice so far, what I'm attempting to tell you is that in private practice, you go out, you carve your land, and you become, based on your reputation, you become a community physician, and people start coming to you. Now, the next phase in that I found was, when you go into private practice, you got to be a good guy. You got to be somebody that's gentle, kind, listens. People talk to you. In other positions, it's this kind of a goodwill, a flowing of goodwill. It's consistent with the hospitals too. And in those days, when I had a patient, and it's my responsibility to take my patient to whatever hospital I want to, based on the quality of services that they're going to be at that hospital, so my patient has a good shot at it. All of the hospitals were the same. There was absolutely no difference in any of the hospitals, no difference in anything in Sacramento. It was a goodwill city. The goodwill flowed. And the most amazing thing to me was the development of a relationship with each and every patient. That comes with recognizing, this is what a doctor has to do, this is what a doctor is trained to do, is to recognize when a patient gets sick, everything stops, you know, and if it's a bad diagnosis, they want to go to a good doctor that's going to really care, and it's all about that grabbing onto the patient that was very easy to do. And the patient, when they start to put trust in you, it gives you a lot of confidence. It really, really does. And when a patient loses their independence, they depend on the doctor, and if the doctor is a good doctor, they're going to know, the patient's going to know, I don't need to go anywhere else. This is the doc I want. And part of that, in getting to know the doc, is recognizing that the doctor, if they're a really good doctor, they would recognize their limitations and get help from another physician or other consultation in order to get them better. And so this is the doctor-patient relationship. We have in private practice the doctor-doctor relationship. All of us docs around town were very, very collegial with each other. We wanted to have each other around. We needed to have each other around. We needed to have our hospitals around because the hospitals are filled with people, nurses, nursing staff, intensive care units, floor, the surgical wards, the operating room, the personnel in the operating room. So it's one big, it's not a happy family, but it's a big, very caring family is the definition of what private practice was for me. And it was the most amazing living the dream that you could imagine. So I jumped into the right vocation in 1985, and it went on that way for probably about 8 or 9 years, and I'm going to explain the next phase of this in a second. But I want to talk 1 minute about the fiscal aspect of being in private practice. In the fiscal aspect, I'm going to tell you about 2 quick patients here and tell you how we essentially billed and how we got paid. And it's very important to properly get paid for an operation and so forth. I'll give you an example. Let's say a 67-year-old lady comes in with breast cancer. Well, my secretary I do a history and physical, obtain the diagnosis, and I don't scare the heck out of her and tell her that I recommend surgery. And she agrees to that. She gets to know me. She trusts me. And she trusts wherever I'm going to take her, and that's any of those 3 hospitals. No, hands down. Hospitals very collegial. I pop by the hospital and say, hey, Dr. Wagner, bring us your cases, your elective cases, outside of what's coming in the emergency room that I'm operating. I was very busy through the years operating in all 3 emergency rooms, too. So that's the kind of the sense of everybody working to get our patients better. And the fiscal aspect of this, we schedule her case, she has her operation, she's in the hospital a couple of days. I bill Medicare, because she's over 65 years old, I bill them $800 for this service, and within 4 to 6 weeks, they pay me. They pay me $800 for the operation. And pretty much straightforward, not a problem. At the same time, let's take a 45-year-old man comes in with a hernia down in his groin, and he has a health insurance company, and I get him to his operation, comes back, he's better in 4 weeks, back to work, and I bill his insurance company $800 for that operation, and I get paid $800 for that operation. I rendered the service, and therefore we have fee-for-service, doctor-patient relationship, private practice medicine. So what I'm going to do is move forward now to about the year 1992 or 93, about 8 years after I started practice. And what happened was, in Sacramento, and this is a distinct thing that happened, and everybody down there knows it, is that I started to sense some disruption amongst the physicians. That's where I saw it first. My colleagues that see him in the hall, they looked worried, nervous. I was, again, busy, like, leave me alone, let me operate on people, get better. let me do my job. And I started to notice some here and there that physicians weren't coming around as much anymore. They weren't going to the same hospital anymore. They weren't referring me patients anymore. And I didn't have them around to refer patients to. And the word I was concerned about it, and I noticed that people started to have little meetings and things like that. Well, I went back to my office, and my office manager, my wife, who oversaw my secretary, paid all the bills, is very, very thrifty and very, very smart about running a business, said to me, well, what's going on is that we have this new development of what's called a managed health maintenance organization. And what happened is that the health insurance companies have seemingly taken on the responsibility of administering the activities of your surgical practice and medical activities. And that includes hospitals. What it means, what the theory was, now this is a very important thing for everybody to get. What was discussed by the insurance companies as they changed into a managed care outfit was that we need to control the costs of medicine in our hospitals, in our physicians. We need to rein the amount of money that's being paid for these services, paid into the hospitals, etc. And also, we need to increase the quality of health care. It appears that doctors might be overutilizing tests and things like that, and actually maybe doing surgeries that people don't quite necessarily need. And so this became the overall goal, the idea of the managed care or health maintenance organization paradigm. And what we define in managed care is just that. Things became managed, and physicians all started to notice it. Well, it came slowly but surely, and more. I don't know if any of you folks remember it, but we started to develop competition in Sacramento. Mercy Hospital, for instance, started to advertise. Sutter Hospital started to advertise. As a matter of fact, it became a pretty big deal, everybody advertising and talking about, well, we have special services here. We can do a very good job for you. And you just have to check us out, you know. And so, and it became a difficult thing to understand why this competition was going on. But as time went on, I recognized it more and more. And since I stopped practice, or since practice stopped me, that is to say, private practice went away and managed care took over, I have had time to think and reflect and to understand what all this competition was about. It turns out that in my own experience, it was all about money. And the experience of the hospitals, it was all about money. I'll give you an example. I'm going to fast forward to the year 2001. This is 14 years after, let's say, 1987. I talked about the $800 I received from Medicare for services rendered to the 67-year-old lady with breast cancer and the 45-year-old man with a hernia. And in each case, I have two different outfits that I'm billing for the services rendered. Well, in 2001, Medicare, at best, for the same operation I'd done 14 years earlier, paid me maybe $400 for the same operation. Now, that is cost saving, but it isn't cost saving to me. It's detriment to my ability to practice medicine because I have to pay bills and I can't work for nothing. At the same time, we have the health insurance company that has now gone from $800, a hernia operation, and is paying me, I would tell you, at times, as low as $160 for an operation I got paid $800 for 14 years earlier. So the point is that I was taking a huge loss in terms of what my abilities and my judgment, my skills, and what I was getting paid, and it was because I, like all other physicians, at the time we ended up on this managed care situation, we signed contracts. This is something I didn't mention, but when this all came down, when the health maintenance organizations came into being, we, by default, I didn't even sign, I didn't read the contracts, but my wife did. She explained to me, hey, you want business? This is how we do it. And it was subtle at first, but it became horrifying as time went on. And so I'm looking at that kind of a loss in income. We literally were not having didn't make sense to practice medicine anymore in that, because private practice was gone and managed care was here. And nobody knew it but us, you know, in terms of the decreased cost and the increased quality. Now, what I'm going to do next is to go ahead and show you, give you some ideas about the quality of healthcare related to all of this, and I'm going to ask you what you might think about this. I'm going to give you 4 examples of a pre- and post-managed care era, private practice and managed care. And a lot of it has to do with money. We're talking about quality here as well. And again, the theory behind managed care is to increase the quality and decrease the cost of health care for the American people. Now, the first one I call here is a crash and burn salvage by the bump. In the days prior to managed care, private practice, let's say I get called to the emergency room by the ER doc. He says, I got a fella here that collapsed on the golf course. His wife is here. She says, a totally healthy man. He got severe back pain and he collapsed on the golf course. So he was in there. He was having a hard time keeping his blood pressure. And this is a stat call. I was looking for a vascular surgeon, actually, but you can't find the vascular guy, so the general surgeon's here. And I report to him. And about that time, he's getting an ultrasound of his belly, and it demonstrates he's got a ruptured abdominal aortic aneurysm, which is a very serious, it's like a garden hose going down the middle of your belly, and when it breaks, it starts to leak, and you die unless you get fixed. So I call up the surgeon. I said, look, we've just got an ultrasound. I'm going to roll up there with this guy. Get in the room now. Let's go. And I will tell you, they did it in those days. That operating room did it in those days. And we get up there, and we have a good shot of saving that guy. And it's all about getting there, a real quick, active operating room crew, and we get the operation done. Well, now what we're going to do is to go post-managed care. Let's say the year 1998, same hospital, same scenario. And I call up, and I say, hey, look, I got a guy down here in shock, and I need to get him up here and go. And they say, well, wait just a minute, doctor. Let me get the nurse and supervisor, like a ward clerk. What I'm getting at here is that the slowness in activity, and so I talk to the nurse and supervisor, and they say, look, doctor, relax. I said, what do you mean relax? They said, we've got 12 rooms going full tilt right now. And I say to myself, goodness gracious, so what do I do? They said, you got a bump. So there's a total hip that's going to be starting. One of the orthopods is going to do a total hip starting in about 15 minutes. And you've got to give them a call and let them know that you're going to bump them. So, step by step, call them. Yeah, I need to bump you. Okay, he says, what are you calling me for? Anyway, so we take over his room. There's about a 20-minute delay on getting that patient on the table. And I look at myself and I say, you know what? There's 12 operating rooms, 12 anesthesiologists in this hospital right now. And this patient comes in, they don't know, the ambulance people, nobody knows, that we need to have somebody on an active surgical day with a room that will be able to take this patient on. And what the whole rationale of this was, as time went on in my private practice, when I booked cases for surgery, the hospitals were becoming more and more stingy with operating room time. The hospitals were being capitated, and capitation means that a X number of patients are bundled, and they call them lives. And when the patients are bundled on the insurance company plans, they bundle the patients and they throw them at Sutter, or they throw them at Mercy. It's like who can undercut the best to get the deal done, to get the patients, and yet keep your business going. I know that the hospitals in Sacramento, I saw this all happen, the administrations of these hospitals grew massively. MBAs, all kinds of people around to help us determine how to help them determine how to keep within a budget and still have any kind of quality health care. But as a surgeon, recognize that the pre- and post-managed care era, we're talking about a problem there. I got a second case here, a 2 a.m. transfer. Let's say it's a 17-year-old lad with his mom and dad, gets to the emergency room about midnight. The ER doc works him up. I get there about 1 o'clock. He gives me a call. He's got the lab work, and he says, I want to rule out appendicitis. So I come and look at the kid, and I say, yes, indeed, I think he's got appendicitis, and I recommend surgery. Mom and Dad, they're all in on it. They signed the consent form. We've got their confidence, and I say, stick with them. We're going to have to get him up to the operating room, and I'll see you just before we go, and I'll talk to you right when we're done. So we get him, I go and I dictate a history physical. First, I call a nurse and supervisor, roaming around the hospital, and I say, I got a case, get the crew, and give me the anesthesia's number. I call the anesthesiologist, hey, Andy, come on down, I got an appendix. I'm on my way. The operating room crew come in, and about 10 minutes before they get there, the nurse and supervisor gets back on the phone, kind of rushed and so forth, says, do you realize that this patient is in the wrong hospital for this operation? I say, no. And she says, well, what we should do is ambulance him over to, instead of saying Sutter, is ambulance him over to Mercy and bring him into the emergency room and take the new scenario and send everybody here home. And I say, no, I'm not going to do that. We're going to operate, get him stable. There's a time factor in terms of the overall process of appendicitis where it can perforate, and a surgeon knows that. You know, everybody really knows it, and if you let an appendix perforate, you're not doing a good job as a doc. I refuse to do that, and I care less about insurance. I would anticipate, and so we operate the kid there, and I've actually had insurance companies come along, or hospital administrations and so forth, transfer from post-op day 1 to the other hospitals to stay another day in that hospital, so that this hospital doesn't have to pay for the kid's day in the hospital. It's all business, it's all very, very matter of fact, and it just doesn't really have that personal thing in it. And in both of those cases, I started to become a renegade in my hospitals, and I could care less. But you know what? The patient comes first, and this is the private practice that I knew before. The next case, a lap chole, home same day. Now, laparoscopic cholecystectomy is a little operation some of you may or may not know about. It's where you make 4 little holes in the belly in order to take a gallbladder out that's attached to the liver, instead of making a bigger incision the way we used to do it. Well, it's good, you know, it's minimal scarring, and patients get back to work early, but they never do go back to work early if they're getting paid to be off. And basically, what happens is that in my hospital, I recognize that taking the gallbladder out makes people's intestines kind of slow up for 12 hours or so. They don't want to eat. And they're kind of, you got to give them IV fluids, give them a little rest, give them a little time in. But it became a very big deal to send them home the same day. I said never. And my patients who come back and see me, they made up for, I think, me more than anybody else, a 23-hour short stay in the hospital. And that means that they don't automatically come back, look them over the next morning, off you go. And so the patients would be very happy when they come back and see me on the next week, and they say, gee, I'm glad you kept me open. I can't imagine how I would have ever gotten home that night. I just can't imagine it. So thank you. Anyway, I had one patient, a 35-year-old woman, and I can't remember exact age, but I do definitely remember this case, where I operated on her, and the next morning I came in to see her for discharge. I had to get to my office and do some things, but she didn't look right. She was kind of lazy, kind of sleepy. Her belly was a little sore. You kind of check things out. And I asked the nurses what was going on. She said, well, she hasn't taken a look, nothing's going on. So I said, okay. I'll tell you what, I'm not happy with this. Check the blood count. I'll be back in a few hours, and maybe we'll just see how she's doing. Just try and get her up. Well, the nurses weren't able to get her up, and it's kind of, I wanted a stat hematocrit. That means a blood count now. Call my office with the results. I need it. And 3 or 4 hours later, I hadn't heard, and I had headed back to the hospital. I thought I was going to discharge her. Sure enough, she still wasn't feeling very good, and I got on the nurses. I need hematocrit. I'm kind of becoming not a good guy. I like to be a good guy with nurses, because the nurses are so important to me, and they're so important to patients. But when nurses don't do what I ask them to do, I get uptight. And you know, this is kind of the way things were going deeper into the managed care situation. So we got a blood count back, and I said her blood count was down. She was bleeding inside, and I knew it. and I took her back to surgery. I told her I got to take you back and fix this thing up. So I took her back and made a little incision on her belly and looked around, found that there was nothing from the surgery itself, but these little holes that you put into the belly to get instruments in. One of them, even though we saw it into surgery, had a stray leak, and it bled real good. And so we got her fixed up. She stayed in the hospital about 3 days, went home, came back to my office for the next week and saw me, and gave me a hug and said, "Thank you for saving my life." And I said, "Well, you're welcome. I'm just doing my job." And what she meant, she said, "You know, all I wanted to do was just sleep. That's all I wanted to do." And it was horrifying to me to think that her husband could have got her home that night, bedded her down, everything's going to be fine, just go to sleep, and bleed to death in your belly cavity. And the point is that, again, we're dealing with an issue where I'm forced to either comply with what the hospital wants, and by the way, it all comes down to the end of the line. This is my patient, and if I think something's not going right, I can always appeal the situation. And that is a horrifying process. It takes a long time to try and make an appeal, but I'm just flatly saying no, they have to do, to get at least a 23-hour admission. So I bring up the issue of quality of health care. We're talking about, with managed care, do we have increased quality of health care? Now, one final thing, and that's the assistant surgeon. In the pre-era, let's say it's 12 o'clock at night and I'm in the middle of an operation, and I got an assistant surgeon. It was on the bylaws of our hospital that you have an assistant surgeon helping you. It's a very, very big deal, especially for general surgeons that are navigating the abdominal cavity, because there's a lot of stuff in there. And one of the key features is to get exposure. And who gives you better exposure than somebody that does the same thing you do, an assistant surgeon? Well, it's a very good thing. We help each other on intricate operations. And here we have a situation where my assistant surgeon is getting paid 20% of what I get paid. So pre-managed care era, I get paid $1,000 for services rendered. He gets paid $200. Now we go post-managed care era, when I could get as little as $300 for that, or even less, for a $1,000 operation. And my assistant surgeon is 20% of $300, which is $60. Now, the question is, now this surgeon, by the way, is really doing me a favor because he's got an elective group of patients. And we have to group all of our patients for elective surgery in a little pattern. It's very stingy with the hospital. They don't want us to bring a lot of patients anymore. And so he's in this pattern where he has now got 4 patients, and 2 hours later, after a 3-hour operation helping me, and getting paid $60, he's going to be bright-eyed and bushy-tailed when he walks in and says, "Good morning," to all of his patients who expect him to be what? Wide awake and ready to rock, right? So those are the issues that I describe, and these are the things, these are the stressors, these are the things that became very, very difficult to argue about in the world of managed care. It becomes an ethical issue. For me, it was an ethical issue. Do no harm, absolutely. And one of the things, too, there's a very, very deep pattern you can get into in talking about the psyche of the doctor as time goes on, and why doctors have been silent about this. I can tell you, I am a doctor, I am a surgeon, and I know how they think. I know how all doctors think. I do. In review of this business here, in the old days we had a doctor-patient relationship. We get this anchor comes on. The health insurance companies and Medicare morph into a managed care or a health care provider. And the truth of the matter is that if we want to use nomenclature to describe our present-day American healthcare system, we have healthcare providers. Now, interestingly, the doctor interacts with the healthcare provider. As well, the patient interacts with the healthcare provider. And the doctor and the patient they come together, but they do so in a very non-personal way. And that's, I think, if we look at the confusion, what's going on out there, that's what's going on. Now, I took it upon myself to define managed care. And I kind of cheated a little bit about this because I'm going to show you another definition in a minute. And the big words that I have in this is managed care is medical and hospital services for the members of a population administered by, I underline those two words. This is very important that we get this. For an organized group, which is a health insurance company or Medicare, and paid for from funds received from the insured and from taxation. Medicare, taxation, private health care insurance, all of you, you're paying for that. You're paying for an organized group to administer health care. That's what we have going on right now. Now, what I wanted to do, and I did kind of cheat on the wording of this a little bit, but what I did is I looked up socialized medicine. It's a noun. It was devised in the year 1938, and I got it out of the Webster's Collegiate Dictionary, 10th edition. And what it says is services for members of a population administered by an organized group and paid for from funds obtained usually by assessments, philanthropy, or taxation. That is the Webster's Dictionary definition of socialized medicine. Now, you can see that I kind of cheated a little bit and put my spin on it, but administered by is the two words that I use here. And what I'm pointing out to all of you right now is that we are describing our healthcare system, and we have socialized medicine right now. That's what we have. The question for all of us to answer now is, do we want our socialized medicine to be administered by a single payer or multiple payers as we have now? And so basically, my objective here tonight was to define private practice from my own experiences, to define managed care or socialized medicine from my own experiences, and to offer you, hopefully, an education about what this nomenclature is really all about. And so, basically, other than that, basically, that's pretty much basically what I have to say. And there's so many things that we could spin off and talk about in terms of how to fix it, what to do, and all that. And I think it's very exciting because, truly, you pay the payer. You pay taxes, and you pay the insurance companies to administer your health care. And if we all understand, I truly believe, and I know about how I feel about all this stuff, and I know how doctors feel about it in general, especially not primary care physicians, but specialists of all kinds. Cardiologists, surgeons, cardiac, colorectal surgeons, all of them. Doctors have been put into a position where they are essentially employed by, because of contracts, as opposed to being on their own. And one of the tributes to physicians still that remains is that they're capable of dealing with this. I will say one other thing too. As we go on in our lives, more and more people, more and more physicians are not understanding what private practice really was. More and more people are losing an idea of what private practice really was. And the truth of the matter is, we have got a lot of financial problems, and we can just bring in all of our ideas and thoughts about what's going on here. And really, I think it's time for discussion. It's time to start talking. It's time to get doctors to speak up, because I know why they won't speak up. I could have a whole topic about that. But to just at least get it out there in the air and see how people think about it. Now, from my standpoint, what this is that it's an experiment to see if people understand what caused my decisions in medicine, and how much I really like it, and everything, and what really happened in this Sacramento environment. Sacramento was, we used to say that Sacramento was the mecca of managed care. I'd hear around the state, everything. They said the alphabet soup. Sacramento's the alphabet soup of medicine. IPA, HMO, PPO, this, that, the other, Sutter First, Mercy Care, it's the Catholic Healthcare West, all these, and if you think about all of the advertisement that's been going on, any advertisement, I claim, nowadays, is a plea for business. And that plea for business is a business that is very, very much in the problems that exist is that the health maintenance organizations and the federal government took for granted the discipline of medicine. Everybody's not the same. One person reacts to an illness totally different than another. One person reacts to an operation a lot different than another person does. And what we have to do is know how to do all of these things and to recognize these things and take care of them and get them better. That's the bottom line. So pretty much that's the extent of things that I wanted to discuss here. Stan, would
Do you want to take some questions?
Sure, I'd love to. I'd love to answer a lot of questions. Go ahead.
Yes, my wife was the secretary for the administrator of a large hospital in Orange County, south of us here. And she was getting all, this is 30 years ago, she was getting all kinds of doctors coming from China where they have socialized medicine. So where are you guys going to go?
Well, what we're going to do, once everybody gets the word that private practice is the real deal again, we're going to take over our hospitals again. What we need to do is to have all of the qualified physicians and surgeons in this country take over their rightful position in taking care of the sick again. So we're going to stay right here. Yes.
So were you involved with a doctor's group? Did you voluntarily go into administering care within these groups?
Very good question. The answer, as a surgeon, it was a default position.
So you were forced to?
Well, I was forced to. My wife said do it.
Take cash for
Absolutely
surgery?
not.
You
Absolutely.
Take cash for
You
surgery?
see, as a surgeon, you have to go down to a hospital and you have to use the hospital to do the operation.
So you couldn't take cash and then pay the hospital?
No.
You-
It's an operation costs thousands and thousands of dollars.
Well, if you're only getting paid $300 for a hernia operation,
Mm-hmm.
couldn't you, if I came into you as a surgeon and you said, you're in a group, and I said, I want to use you as a private surgeon, I'm willing to pay you, I'll put up a bond of $1,000, that the hospital would say we can't do that?
Yes, you have to pay the hospital. The
No, I have to pay the hospital as well.
Yeah, the hospital's not going to do that. The hospital's going to bill what the customary bill is at the time.
And
Absolutely.
when they pay you then, because you're,
No, I get paid by the patient's health insurance.
you didn't pay cash.
No, never took that. It just wasn't part of the equation.
Let me give you a personal experience that we have in our family. Our youngest son was a practicing dentist up here, and eventually he moved his practice down to Auburn and opened up a nice little practice. And one of these groups came along and they put him into what's called a capitation program. Anybody in this zip code, whatever it happened to be, is your patient, okay, from our group. And we'll give you $12 for every patient every month, whether they come in or not. So what can a dentist do with $12 per patient? You do patchwork dentistry. That's what you do. It's the worst kind of dentistry you can have because there was no money to be made at it. And eventually, he decided to go back to school and become a specialist, and he's an endodontist now. And there are no capitation programs at this time for those kind of specialists. But it shows you how they corralled him, gave him the story, and now says, okay, now you're broke, you can only do patchwork dentistry, and he just wouldn't do it. So he backed out of it, and that's a true story that started right up here in Grass Valley. You got some more questions?
Yes. I had a question about Medi-Cal in Nevada County. I don't think there's one general practitioner that I know in this county that even takes it.
Right.
So I was wondering, what's the answer to that type of situation down the road? Is it like single payer is what you would think it would be?
Well, the Medi-Cal patient was a very, very frequent patient that I had in Sacramento. And the bottom line is it paid about 30 cents on a dollar, even in the private practice era. So Medi-Cal patients were not very well, taken in by when it's for elective surgery But to the end, I took Medi-Cal patients because I'd rather get $300 than no dollars, and I get a chance to operate, and I love to operate.
Well, I mean, do you feel that people that can only afford that type of, I mean, as a doctor, that maybe a percentage of doctors should take a percentage of those type of patients, even though they don't like to pay? Because it just seems that like I said, in this county, there's a lot of general practitioners, and none of them will take anybody.
Well, you have to look at your overhead. You have to look at, but basically, you're talking about a Medi-Cal patient. I'm talking about all health insurances that made me not be able to be a surgeon anymore. But for two reasons. Number one, I didn't have enough money to cover my costs. And number two, my office staff is working like crazy, overtime, billing and so forth, and not collecting money at all. And on top of that, the quality of my ability with the restrictions placed on me by the hospital, I'm not going to do it. I just won't take care of patients anymore. I'm not qualified to practice medicine.
The system's broke.
The system is broken, yeah. Well, I don't know if the system's broke. That's another whole topic that we could get into about what happened. It's a noble cause of increased quality and decreased cost. That's a noble cause, agreed? I'm not so sure how noble that really turned out. I don't know. I don't know what to say about that. I can make some assumptions.
I'm gathering, Dr. Wagner, that if you had your druthers, you would prefer to go back to a pure fee-for-service type of a system. If we did that, how would we ultimately control the spiraling healthcare costs that are going on in this country?
I believe that that's a very good question, and what I was alluding to before, with the health care providers that we have now, the insurance companies, and with Medicare, we're looking at folks who have been administering those healthcare dollars. And I would say, how are we doing? We've been going at this for 20 years now, okay? And so the question is, are we up to par? I think it's time for an accounting. I think it's time to ask the health insurance companies why we haven't really had this improvement. And I think that people like you and you and you, they come together and say, let us talk to our doctors, let us talk to our hospitals, and let us see what the customary and reasonable service requirement is in terms of, the service, the hospital, the doctor, and everybody, and let us decide what we're going to do. And I tell you what, let's get some accounting in on this and figure this out, because we as a healthcare system, being a Tea Party patriot, I go back and I say, look at our Constitution. Does it say anything in our Constitution about the federal government having anything to do with healthcare? What I'm saying is that I believe that a fee-for-service private practice system is pure capitalistic private enterprise. And so by you, the people, and we, the doctors, we come together on this. We say, Doc, you think you can do it better than it's being done right now? I think you'd have a big smile and everybody would say, you know what? I'm an independent guy. I need to make my own decisions. And I will tell you, let's figure this out. Let's get education, right from research and having enough money to pay for those people who can't pay for health care. I want to tell you one other thing about this. Medical care is a privilege for all of us. It's not a right. It's a privilege. We have, everybody in this room and everybody in this country has to contribute to our health care. So there's some thoughts. I asked my wife today, I said, what would you do? She says, well, how about we have everybody has catastrophic health insurance. Everybody pays into it. And maybe we can do just like this gentleman over here says, you got an office visit or something that's going to cost the insurance company, you bill an insurance company $150 for an office visit. Well, like he said, maybe you figure out I'll bill $75 and pay me $75 cash. And I'll put it in the bank and use it the way it's supposed to be used. So those are the kinds of questions that are very, very good. And I think that we are up for it. I think that the people of this country deserve good health care.
I have a question, And my question is, because it was a concern, I'm from Europe, and my cousin in Holland, who's very well-to-do, had a stroke, went into the emergency room, and they were not allowed to do a certain procedure which could really stop this stroke process for at least 24 hours. He could not pay a private physician cash to perform the procedure. The ultimate outcome was that they had to cut the top of his head off, and 18 months had to leave his brain so it could go down, and he ended up dying anyway. But had they done that procedure, he would have been alive, and they would have saved 18 months of hospital care.
Right.
So are we there?
Well, we're not there yet, but we have a lot of things going on that I'm worried about the quality of our health care. I really am. Absolutely.
Let's wait for whoever has the microphone.
Okay.
Okay, so, yes.
No, I'm next. Dr. Wagner.
Yes.
What is your feeling about tort reform, the legality in medicine, and particularly as it relates to the new program that they're trying to install at the federal level?
One of the features of being a physician is to look over your shoulder constantly, year after year after year, waiting to find out who's going to come gunning for you. And I'll tell you, you don't know who it's going to be, you don't know why it's going to be, but the bottom line is and again, it relates to what you're saying. How do we get rid of tort reform? When was it that lawyers got to be involved with medical health care? We physicians are the best judges of whether one of our colleagues is doing a good job or not, and unfortunately, everybody doesn't get better. You know, not to scare anybody, it's not a tricky business, but it's a business that you don't know the outcome of every patient every time. And so therefore, I say, it's like a military tribunal. You know, let us deal with our guys, you know. And what reward to a family and this kind of thing. I'll tell you, tort reform is one of the huge problems. And that goes into why doctors aren't talking. It's the legal aspect. That's one of the reasons. It's one of the reasons.
You know, we'll get your questions there. One of the things that I've seen is the AMA does not do a very good job in policing those doctors that are really bad, and they seem to go on and on and on.
Yeah, I can't relate to that. I can't relate to the American Medical Association.
Okay,
I can relate to the American College of Surgeons, and I think they ain't on your team anymore. I really don't think they're on your team. I think they are very underspoken in what's going on, and I can't relate to. I can't answer that question. I don't know the answer to that.
Here.
I'm having a hard time putting the numbers together. What I'm hearing from you is that you as a doctor are receiving less for technical professional services you're providing to the patients. But what I'm hearing is that the cost of medicine is growing faster than the cost of living for everything else.
Yeah.
I go to the doctor. It used to be a lot less for my 10-minute visit once a year, but it's now $195 for my 10 minutes. That's about $800 an hour for the doctor. There are a number of technicians, other assistants in the office who are helping, but I also hear from our own local hospital that it's very difficult for them to break even. They have so many indigent and Medi-Cal patients that have to be covered and provided with service that it's very hard for them to balance. So you said something earlier that intrigued me. I believe that every one of us should pay for an office visit. Whether we're Medi-Cal or anything else, we have to pay something.
I think it'd be great. I think doctors would appreciate that. And I think doctors, now the question you had, you pay $195. Is that what your insurance pays the doctor?
That's what is billed.
Oh, that's what's billed. Now how much does your doctor get paid out of that?
I think $83.75.
Okay, so, well, that's a reasonable sum of money. The question is, if I had my office and somebody came in, not for a 10-minute look, but for an hour and 15-minute history and physical examination and disposition about your health, which is what it really takes to be a good doctor. I mean, that's the way I did it. You got to ask questions. You got to examine the patient, head to toe. Why not? The thing is, that here's the thing. If I got paid $75 cash money, you come in to see me, hands down, I'd do that. Now, again, I wasn't a primary surgeon, I'm a primary care physician. I was a surgeon, and surgeons do big things to people because when you get sick, it's catastrophe time. So my bill for an operation is like $1,000, and I would like to be paid $1,000 for services rendered. So, to answer that, right on. I think, see, we're starting to think here and get an idea how we might be able to make this work.
But that's not the whole cost of surgery. There is the assistant surgeon
Absolutely.
who has to be there the entire time of the surgery. There is the nursing staff that is paid for. There are other associated persons. And you're never able to put the bill together because it trickles in over 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 months.
Let's say that my husband, or my wife, Adrienne, just went in and had an operation. She had a little complication. She was in the hospital 10 days. By golly, that hospital billed $100,000 for 10 days. I mean, this is a hotel, for God's sake. The thing is, and a surgeon billed $1,200 for his operation. Well, look at what the insurance company said. Look at what we did. We paid the hospital $20,000, not $100,000. We paid the surgeon $600, not $1,200. And look, patient, and the patient says, thank goodness that we have health insurance companies. The question is, where is all the dollars going? The one thing is, the dollars aren't coming that should be coming, and on top of that, the insurance company is giving you the impression, or the managed health, the health maintenance organization or your healthcare provider is giving you the impression that we are increasing quality and decreasing cost. And I'm telling you, there isn't any increase in quality, and there isn't they did increase the cost down to the point where I can't work anymore. That's a fact. That is a real thing that happened, and I'm sharing that with you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Last night, I don't know how many people took this in, but last night I was in Nevada City for the presentation on single payer insurance, and I'm surprised I didn't see you guys there.
You couldn't get in. We weren't interested.
But you better be interested because as State Senate Bill SB 810 is coming along, and it is single-payer health care. And you better get on board with this, and you better find out the information about it, because it's coming, and they're pushing hard for it. Now, they had a 6-member panel that took questions. I asked them what I thought was a pretty simple question, and by the time they were done, they were arguing amongst the panel members. They couldn't figure out the answer. So, but it's important for people to question these people on single payer, because as far as I could tell, they don't have the answers. They want to pass this bill, and everything's going to come along later. I think I asked them about negotiating. They said that they would negotiate a fair price for the physicians. And I asked them very simply, who negotiates with who over what is a fair price to pay the physician? And pretty soon, the panel was saying, no, that's not how it is, and they're arguing back and forth. I mean, this is what their health care program, and they say, well, we'll pass it, and then we'll decide this. One thing I wanted to say is there were so many people, they packed that theater last night. There were so many people there. They're going to do this again next Tuesday night at 6 o'clock. Start the movie at 7, and then about 8 o'clock to have the discussion. So it would be very good if people would question them about the way this system works, because I just from the paragraph on single payer, I had about 6 questions that I doubt whether they could answer. So
what theater?
Nevada City,
Nevada Theater.
The Nevada Theater.
On Broad Street.
Right, 400 Broad Street, 400 Broad Street?
No.
It's
the Nevada
Historic
City.
Theater. It's the old historic theater.
Yeah.
To make a brief comment about that, I have heard plenty about single-payer healthcare system and specialists making a lot of money, and primary care physicians are rolling along and making sure that we have good quality. We have socialized medicine now. All of us have socialized medicine now, and the question is, do we want to keep it or do we want to get rid of it? I just real briefly, I ran into a physician colleague of mine a couple of years ago, and I said, how's it going? He said, fine, how are you? Fine. I said, how's it going? He said, it's not good. He says, the patients get what they deserve. And I took that and I said, wow, I don't get that, Bill. I know why he said it. But I say to myself, really, we're at a time now where you will get what you deserve. I think you deserve great health care. I think you deserve doctor-patient relationship. I think you need private practice. And you can make it happen, but you got to start asking questions. I think we the people have to approach physicians in a fashion that's non-threatening. Doctors see patients, as patients. And the last thing they're going to do is to scare a patient or to write about them having a lousy lifestyle and not being motivated. And the fact is, it's all part of the persona of a physician, making sure that the patient relies on it. And so what needs to be done, this business of multiple payer socialized medicine, which we have now, or single payer socialized medicine, I think that the entire discussion of we need to have single payer healthcare system is a bunch of docs that don't get it. They don't get it. And we're starting, unfortunately, to lose the whole sense of our Hippocratic oath and of what our goal is. Doctors love what they love to do. They're scientists. They get a big kick out of making somebody better. There's no higher rush than get a disease out of it, especially if you're a surgeon, because you get to cut it out of them. And they get better, and it's wonderful. Okay.
I've seen the quality of medicine go down and the costs go up, just like you say, and especially since we've come up with HMO and so forth. So we hear what you're saying. What is it that we can do as those of us here? What can we do to help?
All right. First of all, recognize that we have a serious problem, and recognize that if we understand what private practice really is, the doctor-patient relationship, the patient-hospital relationship. You want to go down to that hospital and get checked in, and by golly, you're going to get the best health care, no questions asked. You'll see it in the nursing staff. I think what people need to do is to get it together and start asking questions. And go to physicians as a group and say, look, we recognize we're your fellow citizens, and we recognize that our system is messed up. And we want you to tell us what your thinking is on this. I would suspect they'd be very happy to speak out, especially because one of the things with a physician or a surgeon is that when you sign a contract, it's a legal and binding contract, and there are gag orders. If you speak out against the health insurance company that you are employed by now, you're going to get blackballed out of town. It's a very, very scary thing for a surgeon. The other thing, too, is think of the tort situation of a lawyer. If you speak out to a patient when they go see you as a patient, it's going to be kind of like, well, this guy doesn't care, and he's bragging about how much money he's making. That's grounds for negligence. I think he could have been negligent, says the lawyer. And so maybe go with a lawsuit. So the question is, the thing is to understand what's going on in front of us all right now. And I claim that private practice is it. It's free America. It's free enterprise. It's fiscal responsibility. But, I want to do one thing just one final thing here. I listened to my kid who is in the goal and the desire to become a physician himself. I'm amazed that he wants to be a physician because he grew up around me, and I love it because I'm going to be behind him all the way. He was looking at YouTube one day, and he looked up on YouTube. He found out by typing in Ronald Reagan speaks out against socialized medicine. This was from the year 1961. He was probably a Democrat at the time. Ronald Reagan had this insight that's so unbelievable. He warned us about socialized medicine then. I recommend that as a good little thing to listen to. You go to YouTube And maybe we should have one, maybe sometime we could play it at the beginning. But the thing is, Ronald Reagan speaks out against socialized medicine. And what he really came up with at the time was that socialized medicine, using a point, he said, this was in 1961, one way socialized medicine gets into, oh boy, I'm messing things up, the system is to disguise a medical program as a humanitarian project. Thus, Medi-Cal and different things like that. So it's very, very important to recognize where we're at and what it's all about hitting the pavement, knowing what we're up against, and getting out and asking questions, demanding maybe town halls, starting everybody bring their concerns up if you're worried, and bring all of your worries up in a forum so that we can share them together. I can throw everything I have as a physician because I know how physicians think and what the workings of the thing was all about, and exactly what happened to me with managed care and with health maintenance organizations, and to identify what we might be able to do to turn this around. Seriously, because if we don't do something, where are we going to be? We're going to continue where we're at.
It was kind of interesting. If your car breaks down, you go to a mechanic, and sometimes you get charged $75 to $85 an hour. But most people say, okay, that guy's an expert. He's going to fix the car. I'm not going to be getting Joe, the neighbor kid who mows lawns, to take a look at a car, especially nowadays, because it's not going to work. So, but they have problems when it comes to health care, paying the decision what it's worth, but they'll pay for a mechanic. It's kind of like the kids now who are protesting the cost of colleges. Colleges in the Midwest and South are considerably less price-wise. These children should exercise their free right. If they don't like what they're paying at a college, they should go somewhere else. After a while, the college is going to say, hey, we're losing customers. What can we do about that? The ball player gets too much money playing basketball or something, and the tickets go up to $150 to watch somebody play basketball, and you're paying that guy $10 million a year. If you don't like that, don't go to the game. We're going to reach a point to where doctors, and it's a business. Sure, you're there. You want to help people, you want to heal people,
right.
But also it's private enterprise.
Right.
And when you start dictating to a doctor what they have to do, eventually doctors are going to say, see ya. Just like you do.
Well, doctors lose heart. I'll tell you what, my education was 16 years long. That's a little while to learn how the human body works, disease and so forth, and then to make decisions on people and make them better. It's a very independent job, and it's a very, very scientific job.
Sure.
And so you're paying, when I stepped into private practice, that's what my value was. So literally, a doctor becomes devalued, and he becomes kind of poopy, doesn't care anymore, So what? That's what they want, that's what they get. And sadly, all of the vigor and the intensity of being a physician it's incentive. It's wonderful to make people better. And the gratification is unbelievable that if we can't be gratified, we move on. That's correct.
We have a question here.
Yes.
Well, are there enough doctors that are working together that can...
No, they're not.
That's the problem.
That is a problem. It's a huge problem.
Well, I'll say something in defense of the present system. I feel I have had excellent medical care since I turned 65 particularly. What has astounded me is the cost. And it seems like there is a tendency to practice what I call defensive medicine, and that partially due to our tort system. So it seems to be like a vicious circle that we have to break somewhere.
Well, all I can really do is offer you my experience of what happened to me in a metropolitan situation where managed care came in, and I literally was paid less and less and less for services rendered, and I had to make daily decisions about ethical decisions about what to do with patients. I had to fight hard for patients, and it became a nightmare to the point where private practice is gone. I have no power to fend for my patients, and therefore end up with a situation where defensive medicine, I don't know what you call it, it's just called unqualified to practice medicine. So
So how do you feel about the medicine in Canada? Is that what we really are going towards now in the United States?
Yeah, it's interesting you ask that. What do Canadians do when they're not going to get taken? Well, the biggest thing, and this is something that's very serious that it bothers me a lot. And what's going on in our federal system now is Medicare's got a lot of problems, you know. And they talk about the unfunded obligation we as Americans have. It's a big chunk of the debt. We had the two gentlemen at the Horseman Club talking. One said that there's $114 trillion of unfunded obligation. The other one said there's $214 trillion. I've heard that there's only $60 trillion of unfunded obligation. So what that means is that Medicare, in order to pay for everybody here, has got to raise the money to do it, and that's very scary. Now, there's another thing that I keep hearing. The baby boomers are coming. The baby boomers are a group of people born from 1946 until 1964. That means that if you're born in 1946, guess what? You're 65 years old this year. And when we talk about all of these folks needing Medicare, that's 1/4 of our population. It turns out to be 80 million people out of 320. So we've got this big push coming on. And you know, I'll tell you what, when you hit 50 years old, I can tell you, I'm a doc, your body starts to mess up. You start to get things like cancer, you got cancer, heart disease, and bone and joint disease. Your joints, your heart, and cancer. That's the big ones right there. But there's a lot of other little stuff that chronic diseases start catching up too. But let's just face it. Let's face it. What are we talking about? We're talking about our lady over here talking about her friend that because they couldn't do an operation, a procedure, that had a stroke on to do something, you know, to avoid that. What about rationing? What about the fact that we don't have the funds or the people to do the job anymore? We're headed into a ditch. And so Canada, yeah. You know, you talk about England and Canada. Now, they've been going broke. But now they're really broke. So we're broke. So socialized medicine, are you kidding me? This is America. And we can put our heads together and fix it.
I can see us stopping it, but what about our legislature?
Oh, well now here's the thing. You know, I mean it, all sincerity. The American College of Surgeons has a bunch of eggheads. They're very, very educated program directors from all over the country that have decided to get together and lobby Congress. And they go down there and they lobby them, and they talk about core majors. They talk about pay for performance. They talk about, is there another microphone?
Yeah.
Yes. Maybe I can talk to this. Can everybody hear me? What they talk about is let us do all these core majors and make sure that we prove that we're doing good health care. And, you know, really, the surgical residence surgery programs, residents are being taught in a way now that is, I find, ridiculous. They have shift work. People don't want to become surgeons because it's easier to become a dermatologist and not have to be up and around and, you know, get paid lousy. You know, I mean, it's just, medical students are just ready to go. See, sadly, the system starts to select for very bad problems. And legislature, no. The legislature's dealing is part of the reason we have the problem. I'll tell you what it is. It's big government, it's special interest, and it's lobby. Medicare and health insurance companies, two peas in a pod. I'll tell you something that I learned, they kind of, what I would call empirically as I went along. I would look at what Medicare was billing as the years went by in managed care, and I saw the insurance companies doing the exact same thing, only they would be cutting you more yet. So I have to ask myself, this big happy family of people with this managed care situation, they're hand in hand. You know, where in the heck is the where's the oversight, where's the responsibility of recognizing the problems with surgeons and physicians? The whole bottom line is, there is no question in my mind that that's the last place we're going to go and get help from is the legislature. And it's all legal and binding. Well, we have legal and binding. But the important thing is, all of you pay the payer. You pay the managed care people. You pay their money and they administrate your dollars. And so the question is accountability. It's about really coming up with a system. I think that the future of medicine could be absolutely astounding. We could have a situation where, with good accounting, what everybody puts in, if there's a catastrophic phenomenon, we have pay as you go for low-end dollars. That keeps the dollars down. Doctor puts the money in the bank. He's happy. He pays his bill or her bill. And we really consider where all of this came from in the first place. Contracts, the legal system in general is kind of, with contracts and with malpractice, we have, sadly to say, we have had physicians that have gone kind of to the dark side. I think it's docs that weren't able to cut it in the real world. I think it's docs that, I'm not cut it in a private practice, I'm not a good guy, and therefore I need to get paid. So the insurance company says, hey, come on over. Well, do you think we could do this for less money and increase quality? Well, I guess we could, yeah. So let's do that. Bam, we got a doctor behind us. Or we got a doctor who's an expert witness for a malpractice lawyer. What's the standard of care, doctor? What's this, and this? Could it possibly be that the doctor getting paid as an expert witness as a doctor? These kinds of things are lures from some bad apples in the medical deal that make it bad for all the rest of us, So, I mean, those are that kind of, we can make it better.
Talking to the Tea Party Patriots, what we all like is a plan of action. What can we do? And you say, well, talk to your doctors.
Well, I
don't think that's big enough.
All right. How about the first thing is that we all recognize what's going on. If we start to get an idea of what's going on, we start recognizing that we're dealing with a system of socialized medicine as it stands today. Now, in terms of having a big guy talk to you about it, I recommend you listen to this thing. Everybody listen. It's just a very, very simple little start point. And consider what's going on in our country today overall. Consider medicine a microcosm of the big picture. And the question is, do we want to have the freedom to choose our doctor, the freedom for our doctor to decide where they're going to practice, and to have a customary fee, and to get paid properly, and to capitalize medicine so that we can keep this thing going? We need to get out and get going with research. We need to make sure our hospitals are doing their. There's so many amazing things that could come as long as we rock the boat right. And what you're saying, Stan, is good. It basically, I think this is a grassroots movement. I think it is. It's all over the country. What about Nevada County being the first place to look at that? You know what? Why wouldn't the Tea Party, get some representatives, people that are interested, and we should all be interested in our health care, go down into the local hospital, keep it right local. Talk to the administrator of the hospital, the CEO of the hospital. Say, we'd like to have you come and discuss with us at our Tea Party, perhaps, and maybe be a part of a panel of physicians. Bring some physicians around. We invite you. We want you to come and talk to us. But that takes action. It takes people to understand and to have the desire to do it. So I'm telling you, at this point, your future and your health care is up to you. And I'm telling you, you can fix it. You can fix it by getting rid of all of the stuff that's between the doctor and the patient. Period.
If we have no other questions, we got one more from this
Stan,
one.
behind you.
Okay.
You said that you want to go back to privatizing, your health care. Where does the insurance company fit in that? Because if the insurance companies are running the thing, how can I afford to pay you $1,000?
That's a very good question. What we had in private practice was
indemnity?
No, we had insurance companies who were paying attention to the rules and doing the job they were supposed to be doing. They morphed into health maintenance organizations. They morphed into administrators of health care. They morphed into making the decisions about your health care. And that is where things became dangerous. So if we redivide a healthcare system of private practice, I think that we could have a reasonable and fair insurance company model of some sort, very, very accountable to what's being going on, and it's led by and watched over by the people and by the physicians. And it's just a very honest, it's kind of funny. We have a separation of church and state. I think medicine's sacred. I think it is. And I think we ought to have a separation of medicine and state as well. And I think we should look back at our Constitution and find out what the framers had to say about who in the heck is supposed, how much government is supposed to be involved in our healthcare system. If everybody's honest about this and everybody fights, you get back what you deserve. You deserve the best healthcare in the world because this is the United States. And that's all I'm saying.
Here, question.
Oh, we have one here.
Yeah, kind of along the lines of what Stan was saying. If we're looking for an action, you tell us to go ask a doctor and have them speak for us. And I think that's the whole purpose of this room is here. We have a doctor here speaking to us. But then they're looking for the next step. And from the presentation you just gave, it sounds like we pay a ton of money and you get very little money. And the middleman is keeping all the money.
Right.
And that is the insurance companies and the
federal government. Medicare.
Well, yes, we pay into the taxes that way, right? So we pay taxes and we pay our
They're doing
insurance.
what they do, what government does with all of our money, they just spend it. They spend it for what, I don't know what they're spending.
Right, but so taxes have been coming down since Reagan and the Bush era, and
No, they've been going up. We're fighting taxes.
right. Well, so we're fighting taxes, but the major bill that we see is what comes in from our insurance company when it says, "Oh, we don't cover that. You now owe us $8,000 or something like that," and you're saying you get next to none of that.
Right.
So what do we do to get the insurance companies to stop taking such a large cut of it just to support their advertising and to support their billing process? I mean, that's the majority of their fees.
Well, I believe that what needs to be done is for the people to absolutely question all health insurance companies. I don't care which health insurance company it is, because it is a process called managed care. And what they do with the dollars is very, very important. And I believe that we can share stories and identify where something went wrong. And for instance, payments for a service. There's a difference. We go to alphabet soup. We got a PPO and an HMO. The PPO is a situation where a small business pays for their own health insurance. They pay premiums. And by the way, premiums continue to go up all the time. A person could be paying $1,200 for a family of 3 a month for health insurance, and at the same time have a $5,000 deductible for an operation. Now, an HMO company, patients never very infrequently see that sort of bill. If a patient gets admitted to a hospital that's in a PPO compared to a patient in an HMO, that might be a state worker that's got a laid out situation. Well, one of the physicians that reads the CAT scans, the radiologist, might not participate on a PPO's program. And therefore, that physician's going to bill for services rendered dollar for dollar what his cost would be. And that patient's going to have a bill, and his bills can mount up very rapidly to where a patient has, let's say you get in a car wreck and you're in a hospital for a month in an intensive care unit, this and that. Well, the bill could end up being $500,000, and the services that are not paid for, that you didn't hear about from your PPO, could end up costing you $100,000 out of pocket in that admission. This is a true fact.
Right, I understand that, but what we're paying for clearly isn't your service. We're paying for advertising. We're paying for...
Very good. I agree to that. You're paying for something. I don't know where the money's going. I don't know where the money's going, but I don't like what's happening. I'm seeing it.
If you look at any government agency that you want to pick, the alphabet soup of them, I don't care which one it is, they're all ineffective with your money. And the only place we're going to be able to stop them is if we get organized enough to go to the legislature and force them to change the laws and the rules that are out there. We can't buy insurance, for instance. I can't buy insurance for myself for here if I want to buy it from somebody in Ohio, let's say. The state has rules that say, no, you can't do that. We're going to protect our insurance. The only way this is going to happen is through the legislature. We can go out and talk all we want. I don't believe we can do much unless we get organized enough, whether it's the Tea Party Patriots or just the group as a whole, and go to the legislature and demand this, and demand it with our votes. We've got to vote those guys out that are in there that are killing us.
They're killing us at every level, especially in this state. But it's not going to happen by talking to doctors. We can get them on our side. We can get them to go with us. But the legislature is the place where it's going to happen. Yes?
How is the union involved?
Oh, God. They're up to here involved.
We have so many people who are in the administration creating all kinds of nonsense. How long did you stay in the office? Was the doctor polite to you? And all that. I finally wrote them letters. Stop wasting paper.
Yeah, and they waste more paper than it costs to do the job. Yeah. Anybody else real quick? Yes, sir.
As a former lobbyist, I was not exposed to... As a former lobbyist, I was not exposed to too many of the people in the medical profession in Sacramento as far as...
Speak into the microphone. Speak directly into it.
Is there, such as the unions have, the teachers union, the state employees union, and other ones that really dominate Sacramento, is there an effective medical lobby?
No. No.
Here's a question.
Well, what's sort of been confusing me throughout the night is you're saying I think it's semantics. You're saying things are socialized, and yet as a person, I still pay out the nose for it. There's no socialization for me. It's not how it works. What I see is happening is actually, as he pointed out, that there's large corporations and companies that are in collusion with the government against the people. And that's not socialism. That's fascism. When we have corporations and the government against the people. Same thing, that corporatism and fascism.
Let's say this.
Semantics.
Semantics, what I am describing as the difference, and it is, okay, we call it semantics. Socialized medicine is medical and hospital services for the members of populations administered by an organized group and paid for by XYZ. Managed care is just that. You're paying out the nose for administered health care. A health care provider is taking care of paying your...
My point is that that's not socialized for me. There's nowhere in that definition that is socialized. That's a corporation and a government against me. There's no socialized aspect of that. That's fascist corporatism.
Okay, then let's call it that.
Okay.
You can call it that. That's fine.
I think it's important.
Well, I think it's important to recognize that my definition of socialized medicine is that there has been a change from private practice, which is fee-for-service capitalism.
Socialized medicine is different than everybody else's definition of socialized medicine.
How many people in here would agree that managed care, defined by me, seems to look like what socialized medicine is describing this? Now, I'd say 95% of people.
Well, let me say something.
It's semantics. You're right. And look,
We're more to the general public than what we're talking about in here. I mean, to everybody that's out there.
Right.
And as a perception, if you say socialized medicine, that means something else definition-wise. You can look it up, and it doesn't mean what you're saying.
Oh, yes, wait a minute, let me interrupt. Yes, it does. Because socialized, if you look up the word in the dictionary, it means the government is in control of everything. And the government, wait.
I understand.
And the government is in control of all the entities involved in health care. The government makes the rules that the managed care does and everybody else. That's the pure definition of socialism.
I absolutely agree, but when it's the corporations that are pulling the strings.
Well, it's still the government that goes along with it.
Corporations are pulling the strings.
special interest and lobby and legislature is all a gig, okay? And it is very, very distorted. If it was all for the right reason, if it was all for a noble cause, the cause being the increased quality and decreased cost, it isn't working. It's not happening. And so it's collusion, if you define it as collusion, if you call it fascism, whatever you want to call it. I agree with you 100%. That's a good word for it. You see, what we need to do is fight
It's
it.
just that your word is non-inclusive. I don't know.
All right, well,
That's a matter of semantics.
What I said that managed care is the insurance companies that have morphed into managed care health maintenance organizations in collusion with Medicare. That's what we have going on. So there you go. I mean, I think we're totally saying the same thing. Yes, sir.
Yeah, you guys are saying the same thing,
Right.
and by your same definition, administered by, that's underlined.
That's it.
It's not the government per se, it's the corporations.
Right, but the government is very, very much in agreement. As a matter of fact, the government is the one that starts cutting
We can lobby our government, we can lobby.
We should. We should really make sure that they know that we know what's going on. That's the key.
Okay, Pete, we're going to make this our last question.
I'm trying to understand in my own mind what the difference would be between today, between the private medicine that you described and where we are now. So back in the old days, whenever that was, people walked in, they just paid their doctor cash, or when they left the hospital and they checked out, they gave them the $500. Then insurance came along, and I assume that one of the questions is, did the insurance policy just say we cover appendectomies with no limit to it? Was there a prescribed limit like there is today?
Well, what happened was that hospitals with technology, CAT scanners, MRI, all this kind of stuff, hospital beds became more and more valuable. And hospitals have bills to pay, and part of that whole process of having quality health care is to pay for all of the different ancillary services, including physicians, that are related to that. And so as time went on, it cost more and more to go into the hospital, and that's the fact remains today. I mean, these machines, monitors in the intensive care unit cost thousands, millions of dollars. You look at the infrastructure of a hospital, it's a lot of money. And a hospital bed, it isn't just a Motel 6. I mean, that bed pays for a lot of things. And catastrophic insurance has come along to deal with it. That's my call on it. When I stepped into private practice, you bill to have patients' health insurance. And that's because I was a specialist, because I got people when they were sick and they needed hospitalizations. So it came out of the issue of not paying the hospital off $500. It got down to where it costs a lot of money, and it's rightfully so. But I think if we had catastrophic health insurance, that the dollars were being used to capitalize that process, as opposed to maybe going to other places, we would, and we had a good accounting for that, we'd have it paid again. And for the situation where it's a doctor's visit, hey, I would easily bill $75 for an hour consultation with a patient, as opposed to $150 if they paid you cash, because the low dollar amounts for a physician become it's a lot of work to collect the money, and so it's just about the hassles and everything else. Fee for service, capitalistic society, a business model that is fair for everybody, fair trade.
Is there any place that your industry has sort of diagrammed out in a pie chart of every $100 or $1,000 of fees paid for some kind of medical services?
Not that I know of.
How much goes to liability insurance and administrative overhead?
There's things like that that are done, but I don't, it's people, insurance companies who say all that stuff, and I don't believe in it. I think they're flakes, bottom line.
Okay, we've reached the point now. Pat, I want to thank you very much for being here. Theory on the government that if we got rid of the Department of Education, Department of Energy, Department of Health and Human Services today, nobody would miss it tomorrow. I was to Washington and looked at all those buildings that have thousands and thousands of people there. What are they doing there? They're making rules and collecting fines. That's all they do. They make rules and collect fines. They have no function actually in the health system or the education system, because all you got to do is look at those systems. Jimmy Carter put Department of Energy into effect to make us oil independent. Oh boy, that was a good one. Our education system, look where it is today. And it's all people, and those people are the ones that cost us the money that does not go to the services that we demand and we need and we have an absolute right to. So we have to change that, and the only place we can change that is at the ballot box. We have to be aware of that. We have to write our legislatures, call our legislators, have them come here. We'll have them come here if you want and talk to us about these issues. But it isn't going to happen unless we raise our voices loud and clear as a group and tell them what we demand. Not what we're asking for, what we demand as citizens of this great country. I want to thank you all for being here. It's been a pleasure dealing with you. If you get a chance on your way out, you can drop some loose money into our donation box that helps pay for the room and all the systems we have here. And thank you so much for being Tea Party Patriots. I love you all.
With the red